Hello, I am the one telling this story, and I swear what you are about to hear is the truth that my family has experienced. The story begins when my father bought an old mossy house on the outskirts of the city at a surprisingly cheap price. Later, we found out. The cheap price was because the previous owner did not dare to stay for long. It was the summer of my 14th year. My family, my parents, me and my 6-year-old sister moved into a new house after years of renting. It was a large house with many rooms, each filled with the smell of dust and old wood. The house was at the end of a quiet alley. Its front yard was surrounded by lush gardens, with an old jackfruit tree covering the entrance porch like a green carpet. We thought it was a beautiful house, even though it looked a little old and run down. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the wooden stairs made a creaking sound every time we stepped on them. But after just a few nights, we started to feel like something was definitely off in the house. On our very first night, I heard these slow, deliberate footsteps in the attic, right above my bedroom. It was like someone was pacing up there. And let me tell you, I couldn't sleep a wink. At first I thought, oh, it's probably just mice. I mean, there was a crack in the roof, right? But when morning rolled around, I climbed up to check it out. All I found was dust and cobwebs, definitely. And honestly, can they even walk like that? Then, there was this one night when my mom woke up to the sound of running water coming from the bathroom. Curious, she got up and tiptoed over, only to find that all the faucets were turned off. Just like that, the sound vanished. She climbed back into bed, her mind racing. Who could have been using the bathroom in the middle of the night? Was it really just a mouse? Or was something else going on? I mean, it felt like the house had its own secrets, and we were just scratching the surface. From then on, strange things happened more and more frequently. Sometimes we would hear piano music coming from the living room. When we went to check, the ancient piano in the corner was covered in dust. Sometimes my mother would see the water in the bathtub turn black, even though it had just been cleaned. Once she even saw the water level rise. And then there was my sister Han. You know, at first, she didn't seem scared or bothered by any of the weird stuff happening around us. Instead, she started saying some really strange things that left us all scratching our heads. One day, while we were having dinner, she looked up and asked, "Mom, why isn't that girl wearing a shirt?" My mom was totally confused. Of course. "What girl?" she asked. Then Han went on. "That girl stood at the window and looked at us. She only had pants on. Her shirt was hanging on the door." My mom just brushed it off, thinking it was just her imagination running wild. But then, one night, Han came crying to my parents' bed, her little face all scrunched up in fear. "Mom, last night a girl scratched my door," she sobbed. My mom, trying to comfort her, asked, "Which girl?" But Han didn't answer. She just cried harder. That was the scariest thing my mom had ever heard. She always kept the door open while sleeping. But after that night, she made sure to close it tightly and lock it. I mean, can you blame her? It felt like the house was hiding something, and we were just too scared to find out what it was. Then one day, Han came home from school and told us, "I don't like my room. She stands at the head of the bed and looks at me all the time," she said. "Who?" I asked. Han said, pointing to the corner of the room. "That girl!" Han screamed and ran out of the room. Everyone in the family was scared at that point. We never asked Han what she was seeing. We were afraid to hear the answer. At night, the piano music became louder, and the footsteps in the attic more frequent. Sometimes we would wake up and find that the piano in the living room had been playing all night. Sometimes we would feel the bed shake, as if someone had jumped on it. And sometimes we would wake up to the sound of a woman screaming. There was one picture hanging on the wall in the living room. It was a portrait of a young woman wearing a white shirt. One day my mother noticed that the picture was hanging upside down. She remembered hanging it the right way 2 weeks ago. My mother was very superstitious. She believed in ghosts. From then on, she never went near that picture. One night, Han wouldn't stop crying. My parents went into her room and asked what was wrong. "Why does that woman hate me?" she cried. My mother asked. "The woman in the picture," Han said. "She doesn't want me to sleep in this house. She wants me to die." My mother quickly hugged Han and promised her that they would move if she wanted to. "Let's go now," Han said. We packed our things and prepared to leave. My father went to check the locks on all the windows and doors, but he couldn't find the front door lock. He only found a small wooden latch that could keep the door shut, but not locked. "This won't do," he said. "If it's haunted, we need to do something about it before we leave." He drove into town to buy some boards to nail over the door locks. When he returned, he tried again to find the lock so that he could nail it shut, but he couldn't find it. My father was furious. Where was the lock? Had it really been stolen by the ghost? Meanwhile, my mother went to take a shower, but the water turned black the moment she turned on the faucet. She screamed and turned off the water. Then she went into the garden to pick some flowers to calm herself down. When my father heard her scream, he rushed to the bathroom. To his surprise, he found the lock on the shower door. "Look," he said to my mother, "maybe we should just leave now," my mother said, holding his hand. They both knew it wasn't just an ordinary house. They went into Han's room and took away the picture. Then they left the house and hurried to another relative's house. They didn't dare go back to their own house that night. In the following days, whenever they passed by the house, they dared not enter. Instead, they called a priest. The priest investigated the house and said that it was haunted by a female ghost who had died inside the house. He advised my father to renovate the house and drive out the ghost. So my father called some workers and began to renovate the house. As soon as the workers entered, they stopped working and screamed. Some said they saw a girl. Some said they felt someone touching them. They refused to work in that house. My father had no choice but to do the renovation himself. Every day after work, he would come home and continue renovating the house. Whenever he worked in the rooms at night, he heard footsteps and the sound of the piano. He also found the lock for the front door and nailed it shut. But every morning he found that the nails had been taken out and the lock was gone. After the renovation, the house looked much brighter. However, strangely enough, strange things started happening more often. The first night after the renovation, the wall clock fell and broke at exactly 3:15 a.m. The hands snapped in half. My sister scratched her shoulder even though she was sleeping, she said. Someone pulled me out of bed. I couldn't see their faces, but their hair was long and wet. It was cold. Mom heard someone giggling in the kitchen at dawn, but no one was home. Then there was the painting on the wall, and then there was the whispering voice behind me. First, I'll start with what happened with the painting. Every time I walked down the hallway, I felt eyes following me. The portrait hanging at the top of the stairs depicted a young girl in a Victorian nightgown. She was beautiful, but there was something unsettling about her. She seemed to stare directly at me, and I couldn't help but feel a chill down my spine every time I passed by. One day, when I was home alone, I heard a whisper close to my ear. "Why did you fix it without asking permission?" I turned around, but there was no one there. Then I noticed the wall behind me had a handprint in the dust. It was faint, but it was clearly a child's handprint. Who was this child? Was she the girl from the painting? I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination running wild. After all, it was an old house with a lot of creaks and shadows. But deep down, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something more sinister lurking in the halls. It was only when I told my sister about it that I realized I was the only one who had experienced something strange. "What do you mean?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "You haven't heard anything strange in the house?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain what I'd been feeling. "Well, every time I go down the hallway, I feel like someone is watching me, and then there's the handprint on the wall," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "You feel that, too," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the painting. I thought I was going crazy. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone. But then my sister did something that left me speechless. She took a deep breath and said, "Miss Ann is sad." I stared at her in confusion. "What do you mean?" she continued, her voice low and serious. "Miss Ann doesn't like it when we disturb her." I frowned. "Who's Miss Ann?" As if on cue, the wind outside suddenly picked up, rattling the windows. My sister remained silent for a moment, her gaze fixed on the painting. "That's the girl in the painting," she finally whispered. "She says that she likes to watch us, and she wants to play with us sometimes." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "She wants to play with us," I echoed. my voice trembling. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Was my sister imagining things, too, or were we both being affected by the presence of something otherworldly? As days went by, my sister became more and more distant. She spent most of her time alone in her room drawing. At first, I thought it was just a phase, something she would grow out of soon enough. But I was wrong. One day I gathered up my courage and knocked on her door. "Han, are you okay?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. There was no reply. I tried again, but still there was no answer. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of worry. Something was definitely off. I pushed open the door and stepped inside, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of my sister. The room was empty. I called out for her again, but only silence greeted me. Suddenly, my eyes fell on a sketchbook lying on her bed. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it up. The drawings inside were unlike anything I'd seen before. They were detailed and precise, depicting a world that seemed both familiar and strange. One drawing in particular caught my eye. It was a portrait of the girl from the painting, but this time she was standing in front of the warehouse door, and beside her was a boy I recognized as my dad. He was smiling and waving at her. Why was she so sad? Because he didn't say hello to her. My heart sank. Had my dad done something to upset her? I remembered him talking about renovating the house. Maybe he'd accidentally damaged something or disturbed her resting place. I felt a surge of anger towards my dad. How could he be so careless? But then I noticed something else in the sketchbook. Another drawing showed the same girl, but this time she was standing next to my mom. This time, the caption read, "Mom made her happy." My sister must have known that Mom would renovate the house, but why didn't she tell me? What was she trying to hide? I was determined to find out the truth. I went to my dad and Mom's room and knocked on the door. When they opened it, they looked tired and stressed. "Dad, Mom, can I talk to you about something?" I asked. They exchanged a glance, then nodded. We sat down together, and I told them everything I knew about the girl in the painting. "So that's why Han has been acting so strange lately," my mom said softly. She reached out and stroked my hair. "Don't worry, honey. I'll take care of this." The next day, my mom took me to a local library. "Can you please look up the history of this house?" she asked the librarian. The librarian searched through the old ledgers, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, she found what she was looking for and smiled. "Here you go," she said, handing my mom a yellow document. It was an old deed to the house. According to the document, the house had once belonged to a wealthy family, but the most interesting thing was the name of the previous owner. It was the same name as the girl in the painting, Miss Ann. Could this be the same Ann? As we walked back to the car, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Was Miss Ann still living in the house? If so, why hadn't she revealed herself? Suddenly, I heard a voice close to my ear. "Why don't you ask your dad to fix the wardrobe for me?" I turned around, but there was no one there. I looked back at the house and saw that the wardrobe that had been in the drawing was now gone. In its place was a brand new wardrobe. I felt a chill down my spine. Had Miss Ann been watching us? Why was she asking for the wardrobe to be fixed? When I got home, I rushed to my sister's room. I had to know if she had anything to do with this. But when I opened the door, I found her sitting on her bed crying. "Han, what's wrong?" I asked, rushing to her side. She looked up at me with tearful eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Before I could ask any questions, she ran out of the room. I was left standing there, confused. What had she meant? What was she sorry for? I decided to investigate further. I went downstairs and looked at the new wardrobe. That's when I noticed it. There was a faint handprint on the wardrobe, just like the one on the wall. It was clear that this was no ordinary house. There was something supernatural going on here. I felt a sudden urge to protect my sister. Whatever was happening, I knew that she needed my help. I just didn't know where to start. As the days went by, things started to escalate. The whispering voice followed me everywhere. The paintings on the walls changed, showing different scenes each time I looked away, and my sister became increasingly withdrawn and pale. I was worried, sick. One night, I woke up to the sound of my sister screaming. I rushed to her room, but when I opened the door, there was no sign of her. The room was empty, Then I saw a trail of footprints leading out of the house. They looked like children's footprints. Where could she have gone? I ran downstairs and out the front door, following the footprints. The footprints led me to the backyard, where I found my sister kneeling beside a newly dug grave. She was crying softly. I knelt down beside her and asked, "What are you doing here?" She looked up at me with tearful eyes and whispered. She wanted to play hide and seek. I felt a chill down my spine. Who was she talking about? As if on cue. The whispering voice echoed through the yard. "Thank you for bringing me home." I turned around, but there was no one there. Then I saw it. The grave my sister had dug had a name carved into it. It was the same name as the girl in the painting, Miss Anne. I knew then that my sister had been possessed by the ghost of Miss Anne. And then my sister began to paint. The first painting she drew was a girl with no eyes, long hair touching the ground, standing in front of the warehouse door. She handed me one and said, "This is Miss Anne. She said she used to live here. She said Dad was repairing the house and didn't say hello to her. She was so sad." I was speechless. I had never told my brother about hearing that voice. The spirits are getting stronger. One day I will move out. I feel them coming closer and closer. It all started with this house. It's just a normal house. No, it's better than most houses because it has a big yard and many mango trees. However, my parents always felt uncomfortable living in this house, so they rented a small room in the village and moved out. I had to live with my grandparents. At first, everything was fine, but after about 2 weeks, weird things started happening. I often woke up in the middle of the night when nothing was around me, but a heavy feeling that kept me awake. Plus, I often heard women's whispers and laughter, and sometimes I would hear steps near my bed, but when I turned on the light, no one was there. Then one night I couldn't fall asleep. I heard some whispering voices, then loud steps again. I told myself it was all my imagination, but then suddenly a large shadow appeared at the foot of my bed, slowly approaching. I froze. I closed my eyes tight and hugged my teddy bear. I dared not open my eyes. What if that was the last time I ever saw the light? What if the darkness swallowed me whole? I waited for a while. Nothing happened. Slowly, I opened one eye, then the other. I sat up in bed, turned on the lamp. Under the bed was the same shadow from before. Only now it was my quilt. I pulled the blanket away. I must have thrown it under the bed when I tossed and turned. Still, that wasn't enough for me to feel reassured. When my grandmother came to tuck me in, I told her about the shadow. She just smiled and said, "Don't listen to those ghosts. Don't let them scare you. This house has existed for decades. If it weren't for the ghosts, we wouldn't have been able to live here." After saying that, she left me alone again. Meanwhile, the night went by with even more noise. Sometimes I heard dragging chains. Sometimes I heard whispering. A child cried. A man cursed. There were also sounds of punches and kicks. I huddled in a corner of the room crying. That was hell. I wanted to escape. I didn't want to live there anymore. The next morning, when I told my parents about it, they immediately decided to come back and take me away. My dad said, "I can't let my baby live in a haunted house. Let's return to the old rented room. It's cramped, but at least there is no buzz in your ear. There are no groans in the middle of the night." We packed our stuff and moved out. However, we were wrong. We took that thing with us. Back in the small room, I slept peacefully for the first few nights. Then the sounds followed us here. Every night I heard chains being dragged, punches, and screams. Those noises made me so scared I hid under my blanket until morning. One evening, Han, my younger sister, was playing in the attic of the house. Suddenly, she screamed loudly, startling me. "What's wrong, Han?" I ran up the stairs and asked. "Oh, nothing," she replied with a smile. "There was a lizard, but it ran away." "Oh," I said, walking back downstairs. At that time, I didn't know anything. Now I regret it. If I had known what happened back then, I would never have allowed my family to return to that old room. I would never have taken that thing with us, because the noises became more frequent, more terrifying. Sometimes at night, when everyone was sleeping, we could hear chains dragging right outside our window. It sounded like someone was climbing over the fence. Some nights, Voices would whisper right in our ears. Then one day, we found out the truth at noon. My mother was doing laundry in the backyard when she saw a shadow moving around on the wall. The shadow was of a woman wearing a white dress. My mother watched intently. The shadow disappeared after about half an hour. My mother shared what she had seen with everyone. Everyone was silent. No one said a word. I think they were all afraid to speak up. After that incident, my mother became increasingly anxious. She couldn't sleep or eat well. She aged a lot. She looked like she lost 10 years. "Mom, don't worry too much. Maybe it was just your imagination," I said to her one day. She nodded but didn't reply. She just kept staring into space. I felt sorry for my mom. I knew she had experienced a lot of stress recently, so I suggested we should call a shaman to get rid of any bad luck. Everyone agreed. After the shaman came and performed the ceremony, things were a little quieter. But the ghost was still here. It just didn't make as much noise. One day, while we were tidying up the attic, Han, my younger sister, found a small box in an old drawer. The box was hidden deep inside and covered with a thick layer of dust. She didn't tell anyone, just kept it quietly, like a gift. But the next day, when everyone was having breakfast, Han suddenly said, "I found a very interesting thing in the attic yesterday. Anyone want to see it?" "What is it?" Mom asked. "A box," Han replied. She brought the box over and opened it in front of everyone. Inside was a paintbrush. The bristles had dried up like they were smeared with dried blood, not ink. From that day on, Han was no longer Han. The first night, I heard footsteps in her room. I opened the door and saw Han sitting quietly in the middle of the room, eyes wide open, holding a brush and sweeping it over the white wall. I walked in and asked, "Han, why aren't you sleeping? Why are you drawing?" She didn't answer. She just slowly turned her head to look at me, a crooked smile on her lips. Her eyes at that time, I swear, no longer had light, exactly like the eyes of a dead person. The next day, my mother discovered a painting of a girl in a white Aor dye, standing in the bathroom. She had seen her shadow. As for me, I found another painting under Han's pillow, a scene of a well surrounded by hands reaching up, reaching out of her mouth. Since then, every day, I found new paintings. My sister drew all day long. My sister had never learned to draw, had never drawn so beautifully. And now each stroke is as delicate as that of a professional artist or of a ghost who once lived to paint. On the third night, I heard sobbing in Han's room. Mom knocked on the door, but no one answered. I kicked the door open and saw Han sitting on the floor, her mouth continuously saying, "Why didn't you open the door for me? It hurt so much. He kicked me down. Mom, he kicked me down." That wasn't Han's voice. It was a young girl's voice, broken, trembling like the wind, blowing through a snake's body. After that day, Han never spoke again. She just sat quietly like before, but now her eyes were dull, empty. And whenever she talked, she only spoke in that voice. We invited a famous sorcerer in Ben Trey, who had been called to handle many cases of heavy karma, wronged souls. As soon as he entered Han's room, he stopped, his face pale. He asked, "Where is the brush? Who let the girl hold the brush? Don't you know that it is an object to attract resentful souls?" I picked up the brush, and at that moment, all the lights in the house went out. The shaman set up an altar, burned a talisman, and called a soul. Amidst the intense chanting, Han suddenly jumped up. With the distorted voices of the two husbands, "I'm not dead. They thought they could hide me, but I'm still here." The shaman shouted, "Who are you? Tell me clearly." Han began to laugh, a shrill, dry laugh, like the sound of a coffin lid opening. Then the woman's voice broke into tears. "I am Anne. In 1996, I was humiliated by my own brother-in-law. I got pregnant. The whole family locked me in the attic. I begged. I cried. The night I escaped, my aunt pushed me down the well. They were afraid of a scandal. They covered the well with bricks, covered it with grass, and sold the house. After hearing that, we all burst into tears. At that time, I understood that Han was no longer Han. She was Anna, the ghost girl who used to live in this house. The ceremony ended, but Han did not wake up, the shaman said. She hasn't left yet. She's still angry. If the spirit isn't released properly, it won't leave, and the girl will gradually no longer be herself. When we returned to the old house to take Han away, the shaman warned us, you must dig up the well. If not, the ghosts won't leave and will make Han suffer even more. Although we were very scared, we still had to do it. When we dug up the well and the sunlight reached an eye, she finally woke up. She opened her eyes, looked around and whispered, "Thank you." After that, she stood up, walked towards the light and disappeared. Now my sister has returned to normal. She is no longer possessed by the ghost, but sometimes at night I still hear the sound of chains dragging and muffled cries. I know that is the sound of Aina, the ghost girl who is still wandering around the well, looking for her peace. A week after the funeral, my sister Han still hadn't woken up. Her eyes were attacking, but still fluttering with a strange, irregular breathing rhythm, as if she was sharing her breath with someone else. The shaman looked at me and my mother, his voice low. "The English language hasn't opened yet. Haven't found the light yet, have you?" Confirming that the light hasn't been found yet. The soul is still stuck. Then the girl will forever be material. We didn't know what to do. We couldn't just keep her locked in this room forever, right? But if we brought her home before the ceremony, who knew what might happen? It was tormenting us. So in the end, we decided to listen to the advice of the elderly shaman. Even though he said it himself, it might not work. Our whole family packed up and returned to the haunted house. Dad was silent, holding a hoe. Mom hugged a paintbrush, already wrapped in red cloth. I was extremely nervous. The fear was deep inside me, as if this time we weren't just digging the ground, but digging down into sin. When we stepped through the gate, the wind was steady. No more birdsong, no more rustling leaves. It felt like we had just entered a sealed land. We went straight to the place where the well existed. Now it was paved and covered with green grass. "Here, here!" The teacher pointed to the right location. Without a single analysis, he asked me to knock down the wall. I swung all my strength and the wall collapsed, revealing a broken cement wall underneath. I thought of the time when my sister and I used to play hide and seek in this very spot. Who would have guessed that beneath this innocent game lay such pain? A stench rose from the hole. Not the smell of fresh dug mud, but the smell of metal mixed with the smell of rotten hair. Rotten hair. This stench brought back memories of the funeral home. My heart raced, and I signaled for everyone to step back. Then slowly, carefully, we pulled out the board covering the well. The whole family stepped back, except for Uncle Sho, who stood firm, seemingly unaffected by the sight that awaited him. Underneath was only pieces of debris, and then, hidden amidst the stones, was a bundle of red cloth embracing a small object the size of a doll. Like the doll in the old Vietnamese folktales, it was wrapped in a red cloth. I wanted to shout, to call for help, but my voice seemed trapped in my throat. I swallowed hard, trying to calm my racing heart. With trembling hands, I reached out to gently remove the cloth. The master came down, his eyes colored. "Not one soul," he announced solemnly, "but two." The girl was murdered while she was pregnant. The killer was a human, not an evil spirit. I felt as though the ground beneath me had crumbled. Humans don't kill each other. Not over there. Never. Not in that life. Not in any life. I stared blankly ahead, unable to comprehend the words that shattered the peace of our family gathering. How could this be? What happened to my sweet sister? Why was she unjustly taken away? Who was responsible for this tragic loss? Who was the heartless killer? Mother retorted. What should we do? What can we do? Hearing her son's question, the master lifted his head, his face grave. You need to return her to the womb. That's what the ceremony is about. To return the unjust souls back to their mothers. He instructed us to carry Han back to the room where we had laid her to rest, as if we were preparing to welcome her back as a living being. As he spoke, I noticed a glint in his eyes, a determination to bring closure to this unsettling tale. I held the massage stick for the master. Now I could massage a little blood that seeped from inside. Using a knife, The master cut the rope, then inserted the stick into the opening, lit some incense, and began the ritual. The ritual is ancient, passed down through generations of shamans, meant to communicate with the spirits of the dead. If the soul remains, receive the light. If it was unjustly lost, let it be resolved. If there is a dream of jade, let the mortal continue. As the master spoke the final words, a white smoke rose from the well. In the smoke, I wasn't sure if it was my imagination or what I saw, but it seemed to me that there appeared a girl in a white Aodai leading a little girl of about 3 years old. They were walking out of the smoke towards the direction of the house. My mind reeled in disbelief. What did it mean? Was it a sign of Han's soul? Was she finally finding peace? Or was it something else entirely? No noise, no answer. Just that feeling of relief from the unknown, like a punishment that had just been resolved. After the ritual, we returned to the inn where Han was sleeping. The truth of her pregnancy hit us hard, but the presence of another soul, another life cut short, added another layer of sorrow to the tragedy. That night, when she returned to the inn, Han opened her eyes. She looked around confused. No one said anything to her. It just asked, "Mom, why did I dream that I was lying in someone's arms?" She was crying and hugging me, so warm. Then Han broke down crying. I held it up. I want to go back. I want to go back and find her. The person who hugged me. I want to tell her thank you. I understood exactly who she was talking about, who had come to take her away. I wanted to tell her too, but how could I? I looked out the window. In the drizzly night, there was a gentle wind, and I heard someone whisper like a gentle wind in my ear, "Thank you for giving me back my name." I thought I was going crazy. How could I hear a voice but see no one? Yet it felt so real that I could swear I wasn't dreaming. The days that followed were filled with questions that echoed in the chambers of my heart. Who was that entity that shared my sister's soul? Why did it stay with her even in death? And most hauntingly, why did it reach out to me in the darkness of the night? I searched for answers, desperately trying to piece together the fragments of the puzzle. Was it a warning, a message from beyond the veil, or was it simply my grief manifesting itself into the whispers of the wind? I confided in no one, fearing that my words would be met with pity or disbelief. I kept a close watch on Han, hoping that her condition would improve, that she would wake up from the slumber without an inch of doubt. Each day, I waited, I hoped, I prayed. Each night, I listened to the wind, hoping to catch another whisper, another clue to this eerie mystery. The boundaries between reality and dreams blurred, leaving me suspended in a state of constant uncertainty. The air grew heavy with tension, the silence deafening. The house creaked its mournful tune, each sound sending shivers down my spine. I became a prisoner within these four walls, held captive by the fear of the unknown. Then one night, as the full moon hung like a ghostly lantern in the sky, it happened again. I heard it again. The voice, so close, so intimate, it brushed against my ear, like the softest caress. "Thank you." I jumped out of bed, my heart pounding against my ribs. The room was empty. Han was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the disturbance. I rushed to the window and peered out into the darkness. The wind was relentless, whipping through the trees, but I heard nothing, saw no one. Had I imagined it? Was my mind playing tricks on me? Yet as the days passed, the whispers continued, growing louder, more insistent. They followed me everywhere, whispering secrets in the dead of the night. I became a shadow of my former self, haunted by the specter of the voice. Was it a friend or foe? Was it guiding me or leading me astray? I grappled with these thoughts, seeking solace in the daylight, only to be enveloped by the shadows as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon. Then one evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and gray, it happened. The voice called out to me, beckoning me towards the well. Curiosity, fear, and determination warred within me. But it was too late. The voice had already woven its magic, compelling me forward. As I approached the well, the whispers intensified, forming words, forming sentences, telling my story. Standing at the edge of the well, I hesitated. What awaited me in the darkness? Would I find answers, or only more questions? With a deep breath, I leaned forward and peered into the abyss. And that's when I saw it. A faint glow emanating from the depths. Hope surged through me, chasing away the shadows of fear. Could this be the light I had been searching for? With bated breath, I reached out, my fingers brushing against the coolness of the stone. And as I pulled myself up, the light grew brighter, illuminating the path before me. Clutching the stone tightly, I stumbled back, stumbling back into the light. The voice grew stronger, urging me forward. Was it guiding me, leading me home? I emerged from the house, blinking in the sudden brightness of the afternoon sun. The world seemed new, the colors more vibrant, the sounds more clear. I looked back at the house, no longer a prison, but a memory. And in that moment, I knew, I truly knew, I had found the light